Once you have worked out that you have an interval of a unison, a fourth, a fifth, or an octave, you will need to then work out whether the interval is perfect, augmented, or diminished. In your workbook, you are provided with a set of instructions. Let's explore how to apply these instructions so that you can easily work out whether your intervals are perfect, augmented, or diminished. Here we have 3 intervals. When we work out the numerical name of an interval, we disregard all accidentals, so no matter whether we have a G flat, a G natural, or a G sharp above the note D, each of these intervals will be classified as a fourth. If we look at our instructions, our first step asks us to identify the bottom note of the interval. Here we have the note D. Step 2 asks us to identify the major key signature of this bottom note. You can use any method to do this, but by this stage in your music studies, you should really start being able to recall these without needing to work them out. This will be an enormous time saver as you move forward in this book. So, we know that D major has an F sharp and a C sharp in its key signature, and that all other notes will then obviously be natural. The top note of our interval is a G, be it a flat, natural, or sharp, and we know that in the key of D major we have a G natural. Once we know this, we are able to answer the questions in steps 4, 5, and 6. Step 4 asks, does the top note fit into the major scale of the bottom note? In this first interval we have a D and a G flat, so the answer is no. In the second interval, we have a D and a G natural, so the answer is yes. And in the third interval, we have a D to a G sharp, so again the answer is no. The second part of step 4 tells us that if the top note does fit into the major scale of the bottom note, we have a perfect interval. So here we can call this interval of D to G a perfect fourth. Step 5 tells us that if the top note is 1 semitone higher than the note that fits into the major scale of the bottom note, we will have an augmented interval, while step 6 tells us that if the top note is 1 semitone lower than the note that fits into the major scale of the bottom note, we will have a diminished interval. G flat is obviously 1 semitone lower than G natural, so here we will have a diminished fourth, while here, where we have a D to a G sharp, we will call this an augmented fourth because G sharp is 1 semitone higher than G natural. Let's have a look at one more example to consolidate this method. Step 1 asks us to identify the bottom note. Here we have the note B. Step 2 asks us to identify the major key signature of the bottom note. Again, this is something I should know off by heart and be able to quickly jot down as part of my rough work. So B major contains an F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. And from this I can tell that all other notes are natural. Step 3 asks me to identify the top note, and here I can see that I have the note F. If we compare this note against the accidentals in my B major scale, I can see that it won't fit. I have an F sharp in my scale, but an F natural in my interval. So now we know that this definitely won't be a perfect fifth. If we look at steps 5 and 6, we need to decide whether this F natural is a semitone above or below the F sharp. If you have trouble visualizing this, you can jot down a little keyboard in your rough work, and here we can see that the F natural is 1 semitone lower than F sharp. So the interval we have here is a diminished fifth. Keep working methodically through these steps until this process becomes automatic and you can immediately tell whether the top note of an interval fits into the key signature of the bottom note. Building automaticity with interval recognition is again a very valuable skill that will make the forthcoming sections on harmony so much easier for you.